I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a Chernobyl podcast.
We're back, dude.
We are.
Back in
for one
better
episode.
Than ever.
I was considering whether or not to say a Chernobyl podcast because it's literally one episode. But then I was like, well, what would I say? This is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a podcast.
A series podcast. A podcast.
A show.
A podcast about stuff.
Right.
Yeah, man. How'd you like Chernobyl?
It's really well done.
Yeah.
And there's nothing enjoyable about it. It's like watching it just like a 5.5 to 6 hour horror movie.
Yeah.
Just every single second of it is just the worst possible thing.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, like dark and scary and real, and it's like it to me it almost scratches that same itch that like murder mysteries and true crime stuff sort of scratches for me. Like I go down these YouTube rabbit holes of like Ted Bundy. Well, I mean, I've even watched like the Netflix documentaries on the murderers and just like these videos of people that are like live streaming, and then there'll be like somebody like robbing them in their house or something. And it's just like there's some appeal to that because it's like scary, but because it's real. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm safe at home watching it, so I'm not really worried about it. Even though this Chernobyl thing, like when I was watching it, I was just like, man, why aren't we studying this yet? Like, is this not in our history books yet? Like, history should cover.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Why didn't I learn about it, dude? Was I just not paying attention, or just
maybe it just didn't catch your attention back then?
I just don't remember like
it
Mr. Shet's talking about Chernobyl.
About.
I mean, I just don't remember any of our teachers talking about it because I feel like they lived through it. It'd be like us talking about 9/11. It'd be like who needs a lesson in 9/11 just because like we remember it. But now there are people that are like literally 18 now that were born when 9/11 happened, and they don't even they can't have no memory of it. Like it was not during their lifetime that it even happened.
Yeah,
but now it's history that I don't even know if it's taught yet. So it's just interesting to me that this kind of skipped I didn't know anything about it. It'd be like kind of, I guess, if somebody was like, hey, did you ever hear about this thing called the Holocaust?
Well, I think the main thing is that while it was obviously like a horrible, awful disaster, that its repercussions negatively, I guess, don't extend too far beyond Russian boundary. And even then, it's something that wasn't... Like, the truth didn't come out for, like a decade, or at least the truth didn't come out of the USSR for like a decade.
I mean, I don't know if this show played it up at all, but they made it seem like if they didn't fix it as soon as they did, it could have been a global disaster.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay,
that's the thing.
It definitely felt like
the thing is that they contained it, and so it didn't end up being like we all learn about the Holocaust because it literally affected everything, and we fought in a war about it.
Yeah.
And then also just like the structure of at least our education, K through 12, was very American history focused, Texas history focused.
How weird was the Holocaust though? That was like 8th grade English class. We spent like 6 weeks or 6 weeks learning about the Holocaust, right? Remember like Mr. Garcia's class or something? I don't remember learning about it in history. I remember like taking a special part of literature, like English literature, learning about it because we read the Diary of Anne Frank, and then we had to teach us all about the Holocaust.
Right.
And then it became a thing that we already knew about because we had studied it in 8th grade, but it was like 8th grade English, it wasn't like history class.
But I mean, as far as why you may have missed it back in school was just because we focused so heavily on American and Texas history.
Yeah, even
there was
world
probably
history
only
was
we never
general.
had a class that was world history.
And when even if we did, it was like we just hit all the big things that were
exactly,
like World War I, II, Cold War. That's probably where they stopped. Vietnam. Korea.
Right. Well, even like
I don't even
Cold
know
War and Vietnam are not like, well, they are, yes, literally world history. They're things that happened between a small number of countries.
No, you're right.
That's definitely more like the Cold
global.
War is more like American Russian history.
No, you're right.
As far as
that
like
could
the
be its own
party's
class
concerned.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is. That's the thing, is that you learn more about these things in college, assuming that you take classes that pertain to it. Like in college, you can take medieval European history, which just spans like a couple of 100 years across Europe or something like that. Or you can, there's at least whenever I was thinking I was still going to be a history major, there were 2 medieval European history courses that I could have taken. One that started like in the 1100s through 1400s,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next course was 1400 through 1600 or something like that.
Gotcha.
And so, or you know, however the breakdown actually was, I can't remember anymore. But so, like, even just like in a very specific region in a very specific time, there were 2 different classes.
Yeah.
And so just to have granular, like, actual education happens, as opposed to generalized American education, which is just like, we're only concerned with the 4 big events that America dealt with. And depending on how proud your state is of themselves, you might have 4 years of history on just that state.
Yeah.
Like
well,
Texas.
Yeah. And history is like kind of written by the winners too. It's not like we got really, the German side of the Holocaust. We kind of got like our views of how evil it was. You know what I mean? Like you don't dive too much into the psychology of what it meant to be a German, citizen that had to become a Nazi soldier to support his family under those dire circumstances. And then you get caught up in we don't get a history of that. We just,
well, even like winners and losers aside, Germany basically
you're not allowed to talk about it.
Everything that they could about World War II. They were so ashamed of it and so afraid of letting anybody feel like that could happen again or should happen again. They didn't want any like hint of legitimizing the Third Reich in any form of media or culture. So they were just like, okay, nobody fucking talk about it. So, we're going to just try to move on and never let that happen again.
This isn't really related to Chernobyl. It's more like it's World War II. But who was so like after Hitler wasn't like president of Germany, was he?
He was the High Chancellor.
Oh, okay, so he was in charge of everything, and when he killed himself, who was High Chancellor?
Well, he was the Führer. What would be the High Chancellor? That's what
Führer. Yeah.
Their current head of state is the title of the current head of state of Germany is the High Chancellor.
Okay.
But what his title was the Führer.
And then who was Führer when he no longer was in charge?
Nobody. That toppled the entire German.
So who's the one
government?
Who's the one that wrote it out of the history books? Like
split Germany into 2 countries at that point.
Okay.
Western and Eastern Germany.
Yeah.
But and then at that point, democracy was instilled, and then they probably were then at that point. I'd have to look it up to be 100% sure. But then they became like the chancellors, Eastern and Western Germany. But what was it?
I need to reread these. I need to reread history. It doesn't really matter.
All of it.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. But I was just curious that like who would be in charge after him to make the like choice.
Well, effectively, the Allies and the Allies were in charge. So
they just made like
the divide of Germany between Western and Eastern Germany, making them 2 different countries. Western Europe and America basically ran Western Germany, and Russia ran Eastern Germany.
It's always America and Russia, dude.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they're coming up now, China, but America and Russia have long been the strongest powers, period. After England sort of let go of most of its territories.
Yeah.
Or at least decentralized power. But in any case.
Yeah, man. Dude, like when I felt like throughout this whole show, like I went through a bunch of different emotions with a lot of the characters. Like that female character, I forgot her name, but she was just likable from the start. She was tough. She knew exactly.
Yolanda Komyok.
Yeah, she was awesome. She was just like a good, strong character. But like Boris, right? That's his name. Yeah, you don't really. I didn't like him right off the bat, and then he's just like, oh no, he's just like a good, loyal guy. Like he's just a good. He just seems like he just is for the right cause. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't like stand for any BS. Like he's just straight up like for justice almost. Like
he knows how the system works because his whole career has just been to be a party man.
I guess that's true. He does say that. Literally.
He understands the inside of the machine of the Soviet Union, and so he knows how to make it work because that's all he's ever done.
Yeah.
And up until the point where he's faced with his own mortality, when he finds out that he's going to die within the year, he's still playing by the rules as much as he can.
Yeah.
Certainly once the crisis has been contained. Once they fix Chernobyl as much as can be, and now it's just, the next 100 years, how do we continue to not let this be a problem?
Yeah.
Or just like the cleanup over the next 100 years. Then it's like, okay, so now that I don't have to, because he was, sort of like, at least during the disaster, he's using his influence to get things done and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, dude,
but he's still like, like when appropriate, like, lashing out against the powers that are still above him, and to some extent the KGB. There's the one whenever they realize that the moon, or not, the robot that they get from Western Germany that was supposed to help them shovel off the most dangerous part of the roof,
that it was never going to work.
Yeah, it was never designed to work because the state had not told Western Germany how bad it actually was in that location. So it was designed to be able to survive like 2,000 Ronkin when actually it's at 20,000 Ronkin.
Oh yeah.
And so he's like, he calls, the next up people, and like, what the fuck, blah blah blah, and fix it, get us something, blah blah. He's like shouting at them. He's like, I don't care if they're listening. Fucking tell Gorbachev, And so like,
it's like, hey, I need permission to kill a bunch of dudes, like literally to get them to throw that shit off the building.
Right.
God, dude, just this, like, the amount of power that they like had to wield and like throw around, whether it was like, I mean, if it was for the greater good, but it's just like, it makes me think of like how they built the pyramids just by throwing just like tons of human sacrifice and suffering and lives at it. I feel like that's just like, they're like, fuck, we got to stop this Chernobyl thing at whatever cost, and they just threw all the money and human like life and energy in to get it to stop. At least that's the way this like historical docuseries made it seem, because it was just like, the coal miners, like, they knew they were going in to dig a tunnel underneath the nuclear reactor that could fall on them and kill them. And if they don't do it in time, it could kill everybody in the world because it'll contaminate the water. And it's like, it's just like everybody knew that they were in for just shit, and nobody knew what was going to happen. It was just like, dude, I was like, I was talking, when we were talking about it before, man, like when the three guys like stood up to like scuba dive down into like, flip the switches or whatever. I don't even remember what they did. Like,
they were going to open up the sluice gates to drain the water tanks, because at that point the problem is, they have put out the fire, but nuclear reactors don't cool down. That unchecked, they'll just continue to get hotter and hotter and hotter and never stop. Yeah. And so the worry was then that it would melt through the concrete bed and then get into the water tanks, and if they got into the water tanks, it was so hot that it would immediately vaporize every bit of water in there and cause an explosion, which would then just
make everything,
it would be like I don't remember what they were referencing, how big the explosion was, but it would have been like an absolutely insane explosion that would have been impossible to contain, and radiation would have covered like a 400 kilometer radius, and then that's
when it would have been like a global disaster.
Yeah, especially because then it being close enough, there's 3 other reactors at the Chernobyl facility, so then they could have potentially sent them into a meltdown, and then it just would have never, it would have snowballed to a point where it would have been literally impossible to fix it.
Yeah, but like when they were just like, all right, we need people to go freaking scuba dive down there and drain the water, and you're gonna die, they didn't say that, but one guy was like, are we gonna like, are they gonna live? And like they basically did say it without saying it, and everybody knew what they were getting into. Dude, I literally like cried when it happened. Like those guys standing up for like that just felt like raw heroism, you know what I mean? Right. Like, and those were real people that had to do that. And it was just like right at the end too, when it was just like they died of natural, like one guy died of like natural causes, and there are 2 of them that are still alive. I was just like, fuck yeah. That's what they get for being righteous and like doing the heroic thing. Like the good guy wins. And I just felt like that was really cool. But it was just like the whole time, man, I was just like, you're right. It wasn't as much of a horror for me as much of like a drama. Just like my emotions were going everywhere, dude. It was so crazy. And it was horrifying, so that is true. But I guess since I knew it all worked out in the end, I wasn't really scared. I was just kind of worried and empathetic. Well, it worked out in that the world didn't end, right? Yeah, but I was just like an estimated 400,000 people died because of it.
Yeah, or at least that's like on 400,000. Well, there's. And in that little bit at the end of the series where it gives you like some stats and like, shows pictures of the actual people, and talks about how Emily Watson's character was actually just an amalgamation of the 40 scientists that were there with with them, trying to figure it out with our main character, Jared Harris's character of Valery Legasov.
Oh yeah, it was much
like
prettier
he's like
to
the
have,
head physicist, and then there was like 40 or something other scientists that were there the whole time.
Yeah, it was much prettier to just have the two of them solve
Easier,
it.
well,
But
definitely a cleaner way to tell the story.
But it makes they would definitely get like 40, 50 brains on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But giving all the the facts and blah blah, that there's no way to know how many people were affected and died from it.
No, that's true.
But like estimates ranged from like 200,000 to 700,000. Lives will have been ended because of what happened at Chernobyl.
In Germany, or not Germany, in Russia, doesn't the official record only
the
state
official
that
Soviet
like 40
death
people
count is
died
31.
or something? Yeah, 31 people. Yeah,
never changed since '85. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sticking to your guns, I guess. But dude, it was just like, I didn't think about it, but when they were exterminating like literally the pets and the wildlife and like the just like burning everything that was alive, like the crops, literally everything that was alive. It was just like, fuck, man, for like 100 kilometers or something, like around the site. Like, wasn't it some
everything
crazy
within
large
the
distance?
exclusion zone? Which
Maybe it was only 10 kilometers, but still, dude, it was like so. That's so much.
Well, the initial evacuation zone was just like 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers, and then Valery at some point finally gets Boris to get them to extend the exclusion zone, and I'll look it up just to be sure, but the Chernobyl exclusion zone is considerably larger than that.
If I'm being honest, I didn't need to see the guys kill all the dogs all the time. Like I could have handled just maybe one scene of that. I didn't need to keep seeing them kill the dogs.
Oh, maybe it's not as large as I thought for some reason.
But it did paint a picture of how devastating it was. I guess it was more of a horror now that I think about it. Just like literally like having to kill the pets and like. And you're lucky they didn't kill you. You're lucky like they let you evacuate and carry whatever contamination you had on you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it's almost lucky that they let them leave and like that they could, because that one girl was pregnant. You know what I mean? Like right. I mean, she lied obviously, but and then that baby didn't make it, right? But she had another kid later. Yeah, that was so.
She's currently alive with her son in Kiev. Was one of the other footnotes at the end of the series.
Yeah, those footnotes really made it worthwhile at the end because it was just so sad the whole time.
The current exclusion zone is about 2,600 square kilometers.
Holy!
So 1,000 square miles.
Oh my god!
Is the current exclusion zone size?
That's not even close to what I said. I said 100 miles. Wow, dude. To kill every living thing within 1,000.
Well, the thing is that they didn't.
No,
they just
I know
tried
they
to get as
best.
much as they could,
No, I mean,
and it's
you
probably,
do your best.
It wouldn't be surprising if it was still an effort going on to some degree.
Is there every now and then like mutant things that pop up every now and then from Chernobyl? Like, is that a thing?
Probably, yeah.
Is there a movie? Like The Hills Have Eyes 3?
Yeah,
Chernobyl.
Well, not that, but there is a Hills Have Eyes-esque movie that takes place in Pripyat. Yeah,
really.
I can't remember what it's called. I saw it.
I need to watch that.
Out. It sucks.
They suck. I know.
There's like I think what it ends up being is that there are people that live there in Pripyat, people that like moved back in or never evacuated, like they hid when the evacuation orders came in or whatever. And so they're like just like the Hills, except the Hills Have Eyes guys are mutants because they were inbred.
Yeah.
Where in Chernobyl, they're just irradiated.
So they should actually be like Superman and Aquaman. Like they should have.
Right. But animals lived there. There were people, at least in the successive couple of decades, people would go back, and certainly, officials would go back and, military to continue the work, that people would find like mutated dogs and stuff like that. And there's pictures of mutated dogs, although some of them are obviously hoaxes, just like everything's always got like some hoax.
Yeah, there's this big...
But you can adopt puppies from the exclusion zone now. Like there was an effort at least like a year ago that I saw where they were rounding up dogs, and the ones that could be saved from like a radiation standpoint were then made sure that they were safe enough to be adopted, and then put on like there was like a get your fucking Chernobyl puppies.
Save Chernobyl puppies.
And a lot of the zone's a lot better now. There's people are starting to build up new enterprises within parts of the exclusion zone, not like literally back at Chernobyl, but in the area. Like there's some new distillery that's just now getting started, and they've made a bottle of vodka. It's radioactive vodka.
Oh, nice. Chernobyl brew.
Yeah, right. So, we're at the point where people are able to inch back in.
It's like in Fallout, you can get a couple rads before you go. You just got to take your
Rad-X.
Your Rad-X, yeah. It's like just a little bit of radiation makes you. It made him stronger, right? Didn't a little bit of radiation like give him a power or something?
Depending on perks that you had.
Okay, yeah. Fallout's awesome, but that's not this, dude. So how much of Chernobyl did you know going in? You knew a lot about it?
For some reason that I can't remember now because it's been years, but everything that happened there fascinated me when I was a lot younger.
How did it line up?
So I just, for what I remember, because while I did research it a bunch back then, that was 15 years ago. Yeah. So I definitely lost a lot of the knowledge in that period of time. But I mean, as far as like sequence of events, it's right, for what I remember, it lines up. I certainly didn't remember like any of the names of the
for
people.
Sure, yeah, those names are hard.
But a lot of it was reminiscent, and even though me knowing as much as I did already about it, watching watching like people move through those events, it was something else, and that's why it was like a horror film that lasted 6 hours. Because it was like it's like a horror film or a horror story, rather, that the monster isn't a monster. The monster is the end of humanity.
The end of the world.
And somehow it was able to be averted.
Yeah, it's definitely horrifying. It's because it.
And it wasn't even just like the monster was the end of humanity. The monster was the end of humanity brought on by humanity.
And it was like just an accident. It literally it wasn't his fault at the same time.
It was an accident born of gross negligence.
That's true, but the guy that made the choice didn't know that there was that he thought there was a failsafe the whole time. So it's like it wasn't his fault the whole time. You know what I mean? Like wasn't that the unanimous choice at the end? You're right. There was.
It would be like if I had an ejection seat in my car, but I was still like, well, I can drive after 800 beers. And I can drive going 100 miles an hour down Mopac, but I'll be okay because I have an ejection seat.
Well, I don't know. They made it a little different than that, right? Like, because they made it sound like they had he thought he could stop, like when they were running the test. Like he didn't think that there was any way anything could go wrong.
Even whenever they're in the middle of being about to start the test, they're still breaking all the rules.
Yeah, it's true. I forgot about that.
Because so like there were
plenty of signs.
There was a chain of disaster that happened here. They're going to run this safety test, which they've already failed 3 times. And so this is going to be the 4th time that they do it. They have to be delayed by 10 hours because the power grid requires. So for the safety test to happen, they have to bring down the reactor's power output by over half, which is not going to work for manufacturers in Kiev. And so the higher ups, because the Soviet Union was obviously a communist state. So if the government says, nope, that manufacturing needs to continue to happen, as opposed to like, if this happened in America and Ford called GE and was like, nope, we need y'all to keep that plan up. GE would be like, fuck you, we're going to do it because it's all private business,
right, know? Yeah.
As opposed to everything being run by the state. And so they're like, fuck, okay, well, we have to delay, but we're going to do the test anyways. We've been trying to get this done for a while because all 3 of them want a promotion. And so they're continuing with the test solely because they want to get it done because it means promotion for all 3 of them. The CEO not CEO, these are equivalent positions. The CEO of the nuclear plant, the head scientist of the nuclear plant, and the head engineer of the nuclear plant. They all can move up to those respective ranks, with the CEO moving off to probably Moscow for something. And so that's what's at stake for them. So they're going to continue anyways. But that means that they have to do it with Night Shift, who is
lacking.
Yeah, they have never done this test before because that was a day shift thing that was happening. They didn't have any time to be briefed on it. Whenever Dyatlov gets in there, he's literally throwing pamphlets at people saying, "Here, either read this or just fucking listen to me. We're doing this. I don't care if y'all don't know what to do." And
that yeah. Do you think that's actually how it happened, or was that like?
It's in the testimony.
That was in the testimony.
Yeah, it's in the testimony by the 4 or 5 people that died within the first 3 weeks. Those scientists that were the engineers that were in the control room.
That's true. I didn't.
It was just like.
Did you read the testimony? That
I didn't like
crazy.
Read
or like you read like
of
about it.
Yeah, but everything that came out in successive decades.
That's crazy.
All tracks with that being the case.
So even with all of that, didn't he still think that like it could be stopped, right? Like, didn't he still kind of think that like even if shit hit the fan, they could?
Well, yes, and then the thing is that everybody's saying during the first 2 episodes, an RBMK reactor can't explode.
Right.
So that was just never even on the radar of possibilities.
Yeah. So,
but nuclear meltdown is always a possibility, whether or not it's the result of an explosion.
That's true.
And so for them to, and even in the middle of them, after he's gotten to the point where he's forcing them to do the stuff that they don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So, there's the gross negligence there. Even whenever things start to go wrong in the middle of a test that they weren't prepared for, he's still like, fuck it, do it anyways. You know? So they're already breaking the rules by doing things in the wrong way. And then he's still like, nah, just do it anyways. I don't give a shit.
God, I can't even imagine. Like, I feel like when like a disaster situation or whatever happens at work, or like I just kind of bite the bullet and I take it. Like I don't ever just like keep pushing head on and like avoiding it. You know what I mean? Like he just completely ignores it, like, and doesn't do it. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's crazy to me to think like what would possess him to do that. Like I know a promotion is great, but I like how great. Like,
it's just in his character. It's just he was that type of person. It's just gross negligence and incompetence. Yeah,
I guess just the sad thing though is that like I guess he literally had the competence. He just wasn't. He was negligent. Yeah. So and he had been doing it for like 30 years, right? Like, didn't he know like how to do everything, but he just wasn't doing it? Like he was just doing it the wrong way for all the wrong reasons to get the.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get a whole lot of motive from him because we're never inside his head or from his perspective.
Yeah, that's what we need. The counter.
Right.
The story that nobody wants. Yeah, that sucks. Dude, just all around this story is
But
tough.
he never believed that he was wrong.
No,
like
no,
even
no.
in the trial, they didn't have this part in the show, but he very famously says that I can't remember the exact words, but he says, "I will never admit to having done anything wrong, but I also can't say that I didn't do anything wrong." And so, which is a very Soviet thing to say, but
the fifth.
Right.
But so, the Soviet version.
That's just, the way that he thought.
Man, Putin looked good. Like the actor they got to Putin.
Putin wasn't in this.
Whoever they got to look like Putin looked just like Putin in it. Who was it? No,
Putin's character was not in this show.
No, I know. But who was that guy? Who was that Russian guy that looked just like Putin?
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a guy in this show that looked like Putin to me.
When?
When they were talking to the government. Who was in charge?
During the trial?
Yeah. Was that not him? Hasn't he been in charge for a long time? He's like 70.
Gorbachev was in charge during
Putin
the Soviet. Gorbachev didn't relinquish his rule over the Soviet Union until the Soviet Union dissolved.
Dude, I know nothing
in 96.
about Russian history. Obviously,
I can't remember exactly. I'm wrong about that for sure.
No,
but it was in the 90s. But in any case,
and then that's when
Putin's character
came.
Is not. No, Putin didn't. Putin didn't become.
How long has he been relevant?
President until like the early thousands or something like that. I can't remember. But he also has had a couple of position changes. I mean, he's been involved in the Russian, quote unquote, democratic government.
So he was probably there. No, I'm just
He was
kidding. No, I'm kidding.
He was probably literally involved in the government, but he had nothing to do as far as this miniseries is concerned.
No, yeah, who is in charge then? Who you just said it?
Gorbachev.
Okay.
Mikhail Gorbachev.
He just maybe just like Russian leaders just have a look to me and they hit it. You know what I mean? Like that's super.
Well, we don't even see Gorbachev in the show.
Then who am I thinking of? Then why did you say Gorbachev? You know I'm not talking about him then.
Because you asked who was leading the country at that time.
Well, in the show, who is the leader though? Who's the one that was like in charge? Man, there was a guy that was in charge that I swear looked just like Putin.
The chairman of the commission?
Yeah, maybe.
That was, I don't remember his name. The guy with the birthmark on his skull. He was bald. He had like a big birthmark.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you thinking about the KGB director?
Yeah, at this point, it could be anybody.
All
Never mind. Let's forget that train of thought. Yeah, we'll never get anywhere from there. But they got a guy that just looks like him. They got just like that. They got a look down.
The prosecutor for the state during the trial is the actor that plays Roose Bolton in Game of Thrones. And he has a very similar facial structure to Putin.
Oh, dude, that's exactly where I got it. There you go.
He's far from running the country, but
no, he ran the country in my version of the show. And no, I don't know anything. Yeah, dude, that's why I knew him. Why does Roose Bolton look like Putin to me?
They just have a similar facial structure.
Yeah, I guess I do kind of look the same.
Yeah, he was the state prosecutor.
Okay.
During the trial.
Yeah, dude, I just turn people into whatever I want and I make it into my own story. Dude, would you watch it again?
I could. I don't know that there would be much reason to.
Yeah, you already know so much.
It's not like it's a mystery that you're figuring out, you know, and then you could go back and be like, oh, that was seated here, because that wasn't the purpose. It wasn't like, here's some clues and then we all get there at the end and figure it out. No, it's just like, here's a sequence of events and this is what happened. You know, nothing was like revealed at the end.
Yeah.
So aside from just being able to revisit the extremely well done nature of it, would I guess be the only value that you could get from a second watch.
Yeah, since it's like I didn't know anything about it, it was like my first introduction to it. So like I think watching it for me would be kind of solidifying all the details and making it like, oh wow, that's like really, like I could tell somebody more about it rather than just kind of recommending it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, making it into a mini series, a story of a mini series, you know, was very masterfully done. And so just to be able to appreciate that would be a good reason to watch it again. I don't have a reason to even do that in the next like year or two though. You know, like
there's so many shows too.
Yeah.
I really like this theme of like of just kind of like period pieces, but like being really well done. Like I don't know if it's really a theme or I'm just making it into one with the OJ series and that like Fox did, and then this Chernobyl, like just the vein of like really well done historical series that are still relatively current. You know, like it's just like it's really cool. Like it's so relatable because it's fresh, you know. It's just the 80s, or you know.
Right. Yeah. And HBO has so many good ones. If it even not just the mini series like this, but documentaries that they do, like the Going Clear, the Scientology one is also horrifying, but very well done and worth watching. They have several that are extremely good. So they have a couple of sports documentaries that are extremely good.
They have that tickle documentary about the tickle fetish.
I remember you watching that and telling us about it. That sounds
brutal.
That sounds awful for completely different reasons.
I can't believe it made it onto HBO. It was insane. So, man, there's so many documentaries.
Yeah.
I really liked this. I mean, how did you get into it? Like, what made you? How did you find like info about it? Did you just like pick up did you read a book on it, or did you just Google a lot of Chernobyl stuff?
Just
like,
internet.
Yeah, internet research.
Yeah, as far as whenever I was looking it up when I was younger, when I was like 13, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all just internet research, Wikipedia stuff, History Channel, or other websites like that. and things, and maybe here or there like a special might have come up on TV and I've been like, oh, I'll watch this or something, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, even whenever we were kids, like in the late 90s, there were still answers happening, like,
yeah, that's a good point.
While the Soviets not almost immediately, like within a week, acknowledged what it was that had happened, that the reactor had exploded because they had to, because like Sweden picked up radiation and the U.S. took satellite images and was like, hey, something happened. It's not what you're telling us. We're looking at
everything.
Like, okay, well, we have to admit to some of it, but they still never, well, not never, but at least in official statements, they didn't, release the actual like Röntgen readings, and the death count, like we talked about earlier, is by official Soviet records 31.
Yeah, not accurate. Dude, I'm pretty sure there was like, just like right off the bat, like I think they named more than 31 people that died in the show. Like I think they had more than 31 character names. And
well, every single one of those people on the bridge in the first episode died.
Oh yeah,
every single one of them.
But they didn't in the show.
They did.
I'm pretty sure. I thought they didn't show that.
Well, we didn't literally watch them die on their hospital beds, but they all went to hospital and they died.
Oh, I see what you mean. Because didn't the bridge fall?
No.
What bridge? Didn't part of the bridge? There was some bridge that like part was falling, wasn't there?
No.
Man, what show did I watch?
Well, you've also now watched it like 4 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, no, I watched it.
It's been a long while longer for you than it has for me. I just finished it last night, so.
Yeah, the bridge scene.
There was a bridge. It's a bridge that goes over the railway, and so like Chernobyl had some residential area literally within its city limit, but it's mostly the power plant. All the workers, except for maybe like 5 that lived in Chernobyl, lived in Pripyat, which is the town that we see everybody in the beginning. And the railway bridge had a really good straight viewpoint shot towards Chernobyl.
Oh,
so a bunch of people got, in the middle of the night whenever the explosion happened, that obviously woke everybody in the town. And some of them were like, well, let's go to the bridge. We can get a better view. We can't go to sleep at this point anyway.
Yeah, I remember all that now. I'm dumb. I totally, this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I literally watched this internet video of a bridge like that was like crumbling, and like these people were walking across it, and like you're sitting there watching and you're like, how is the bridge not falling? And then it eventually falls when like this one person like goes across, and it's like the 20 people that went across it beforehand didn't, and it was like right around the same time, and it doesn't matter. But I remember the scene that you're talking about because well, I remember them all going to look at what happened, because there was like, oh, like that was the news that what was going on, like the big thing that was going on.
And now that they're awake, it's like, well, go back to sleep now. Let's just get a bottle of vodka and go look at the fire from the bridge.
Yeah. The nuclear reaction. That, dude. What do you even do? Like, have you seen any pictures of that? Like, are there pictures of that? Of like the
what?
Of like the inside of the reactor from the top?
There can't really be. I mean, aside from like the satellite images that the U.S. got, in the following days are pretty much it. And then there were some that were taken by like helicopters once they were able to dampen some of the innate radiation so that they could, even at maybe like couple of thousand feet higher than initially, they could then finally get a helicopter over it and maybe take a picture, things like that. So things did come out, but it just so far as the untrained eye, the non-nuclear physicist can see, it just looks like an exploded building.
Well,
you can't make anything of it.
Well, just there's that constant plume of smoke that's just shooting up, and then when you brought up the helicopters, it reminded me of that scene with the helicopters when they were flying over, and they're like, no, you can't pour sand on it from like directly over it. You have to start
like hope that the wind carries it
kilometers away.
Well, not 20 kilometers.
No, I know. But you had to start pretty far away.
They didn't want them within 20 or 30 meters of the opening, and then the one helicopter doesn't listen and flies over it and then immediately crashes.
And
because the radiation is so insane in that, directly above the hole, that it fried all the electronics. And then, within that minute, gave all of the crew of that helicopter a lethal dose anyway. So they would then have been doomed for within a week probably.
They look at each other and they're like, well, what do we do? It's like, well, send the next one in. What can we do? We have to keep going.
Yeah.
That's just the crazy scariness of this whole thing. Is just like, no matter what they did, it's like if they failed, they just had to keep trudging through the mud,
right? Because otherwise the world ends.
Yeah,
possibly.
But then,
those were
the
no
stakes.
Definitive answers as to maybe that doesn't actually happen. They have all this scientific theory about it, but like Valery says in the beginning, whenever he's still having to convince Boris how serious this is and why he doesn't have definitive answers, like this has literally never happened on this planet before. So I don't know.
The stakes are literally like. Yeah, they could be anything. It could be the world. We're lucky, dude. You think we are mutant because of it a little bit?
No.
Radiated? You don't think they radiated the world? Man, I liked it, dude. I hope that they make some more series kind of like this show. I don't really know.
They definitely
how
will
much...
continue to. I mean, it's successful, and whether or not it's like every individual show is successful, HBO has a habit of making these prestige type shows. Yeah. Even if it's a fictional thing like Game of Thrones or some other show that I can't remember right now that I watched that I thought was really good. It's all, it's extremely high quality stuff.
Yeah. I kind of want them, like if I had my way, I think I would want something on like the Persian like princes and stuff, like the royal families of like those kind of like Indian noble families, because they're like just so wealthy, you know what I mean? Right. I know those are super general terms because I don't actually know who I want them to start looking for. Right. Probably Turkish, and I also I would want them to do like and then bleed into like the Armenian genocide. Like I want a good documentary on the Armenian genocide because nobody talks about that one that much. Yeah, or at least I just now heard about it, and it's a genocide.
It's not, it's like, not what? The most well publicized thing that happened. I know a little bit about it. The
Kardashians are Armenian. How's it not all over the news? Maybe it's just me getting into history because, like we were talking about before, I've been reading a lot more like autobiographical, like kind of true stories. Like I'm reading The Wolf of Wall Street right now, and I had read The Disaster Artist a couple weeks ago. I read that one twice actually, just like back to back. That was good. But The Wolf of Wall Street's like 25 hours of audio, so I'm just like, all right, let's just listen to this one. It's good though. And I guess I'm just thinking like what I want next, to because Chernobyl's good, and I want more. Like I don't know why I have this history bug right now, because I've never been really I've always been interested but never pursued it, or actively sought out history.
Well, all that stuff's out there.
Maybe I'll look up Mongolian stuff.
Chernobyl was engaging because it was done in a dramatic telling, as opposed to being like old History Channel shows where they just literally sat down with professors and you get the sequence of events, which was I loved that back then. They don't do that anymore because it's not extremely engaging.
They do like a slow rising shot of like a carpet drawing of Mongolians
attacking. Yeah. That's how.
And they're talking about
History
what happened.
Channel used to be, and sometimes they would fork out the money for reenactments to be done by just people, and it was cheesy and whatever.
Whereas now they're doing an entire reenactment of the whole events. Like if they did a reenactment of Genghis Khan, or however you say it. If they did a reenactment, they'd do his whole story. Like they wouldn't just tell you a little bit about the Mongolian Empire.
Well, depending on who it is that's footing the bill.
I'm having HBO foot the bill for this one, or I'm hoping they'd foot the bill for this. That's what I want, dude. I want more. Because, dude, I want more like true history, because like that's what made Game of Thrones so juicy, is that it was based on
true history.
Well, there was a lot of stuff that it was based on, like that happened in real like historical things, like a lot of the incest stuff that happened. Like there was like a noble family, like I think they're I think it was straight up like it wasn't the Lannisters, it was like the Lancasters, right, and they had like a very incestual family relationship with like a lot of it's just like a lot of like there were a lot of parallels that Martin kind of tied from, it was history all throughout the like hundreds of years. So he pulled all the juiciest bits of his, So, but that being said, it got me. So I guess that's just what I want. Like I want to, they're doing so good. I guess I like the way it's going. I'm trying to compliment them. I don't know how to do it without just talking about it a lot.
Well, HBO already has a ton of stuff on there. Just dig through the library. And there's a bunch of stuff on Netflix as well. I used to watch a lot of documentaries on Netflix when I still had a subscription. There's stuff on Hulu. There's Amazon is starting to build up a library of things. You can find all kinds of stuff. I've got the entire Crusades series from the History Channel that ran back in like 2003.
What is that?
The Crusades,
like the Crusades, like for Christ.
Well, for the Holy Land,
those Crusades,
where Christianity tried to eradicate Eastern presence in Jerusalem.
Damn, I know nothing about that.
Mm-hmm.
Except for that.
You want to borrow my DVDs? I've got like 8 hours of History Channel documentary on it.
Is it good?
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's cool.
It's classic History Channel though, like we were talking about earlier, where it's just a bunch of sit down. And it was one of the more highly produced ones where there are reenactments still there. But all that stuff doesn't really matter for this.
Cool.
But it's all out there.
I
everything's already been made to some degree. You just have to find the one that engages you.
Yeah, it's funny too because like if I had to take a test on it, I probably wouldn't do great. Like I don't. But I feel like I get the point of it. You know what I mean? Like that's why I would seek it out. Is like I want to learn about it and give it the respect it deserves, and then kind of learn from it and let it like affect me how it does. And I don't know if that's really like the point of history, but I guess that's why I'm starting to like it, because it's just like it's starting to affect me more on like a bigger scale. I guess like I start to think about. No, I don't know. It's been interesting for me. Mm-hmm. But I guess you've had the history bug for a while, huh?
It was probably about as far back as I can remember.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm slow. I'm what is it? A late bloomer. But I'm coming up. I always thought that I'd be like an old man once I started liking history.
Yeah.
But. Now I'm here. I'm an old man. Well, what else do you think about the show? I mean, I really liked all the scenes with the miners. That was funny. Like, they were funny. They were cool. They were just good old hardworking guys.
Right. They were definitely like, of all the people that were there, they were like the everyman, because how easy is it to relate to a higher ranking party official in government? How easy is it to relate to a couple of nuclear physicists? Like, those are not things that I can comprehend.
I loved that everyone spoke English. That was nice. For me, as a viewer, it was very nice, because they could have gone very Passion of the Christ with it and made me read subtitles or whatever. It was interesting, because it would have been just as engaging if they had spoken
Russian.
I didn't want to sound stupid and have it be like some dialect of Russian that I didn't know. I mean, it would have been just as engaging, I think, if they had spoke Russian. But I kind of appreciated that it was done with a Russian accent. I wonder if that offended anybody. Probably not.
Even with there was only really a handful of the people that did do a Russian accent. The majority of them, you could still hear their actual natural British accents.
Yeah, I was gonna say they had British accents, didn't they?
like our three main characters, Boris, Valery, and Yulanov, all had pretty British accents.
The only guy I can think of with a Russian accent was like the top miner. The foreman of the miners that we first see.
Yeah. But even with that, like, it was kind of they were all pretty weak Russian accents. None of them were extremely strong, except for like maybe like a couple of people at the hospital kind of stuck out to me as having like decent Russian accents in a English approximation.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's a silly thing, I guess, for me to appreciate, is that I didn't have to. Is that it was in English, But
well, they weren't going to have all these people learn Russian,
Yeah, and I guess they couldn't, and they probably couldn't have. Russia probably wouldn't have done it. The Russia might not have made this docuseries. This miniseries.
What?
You know what I mean? Like, Russia wouldn't have published, like, to get a bunch of Russians to do this show, rather than like British publishing company producing it. I'm saying like HBO Britain made this rather than like HBO Russia. I doubt HBO Russia would have said, "Hey,
the
let's
same
do
studio
this."
house could have hired Russian actors to do so.
No, you're wrong. I guess so, but we don't have any Russian actors. Man, it was good. I liked it. Would watch it again. I don't really know what else to say about it.
Yeah. There's, I guess, in short, extremely well done. Absolutely horrific to watch.
Yeah, dude, I was crying.
It was really difficult to watch. Just probably the biggest chain of disaster that humanity's ever committed, with some of the biggest possible consequences. Because even like and you can get really granular with chains of events, and you could say that, things like World War II happened because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. But a lot of those things weren't disasters and mistakes and negligence.
Right.
Whereas this is it's evil's not the right word, but it's like an evil event.
Disaster fits really well.
Yeah, it's a disaster that was born of disastrous decisions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas at least on a surface level, without getting too granular about it, Hitler rose to power not by a mistake.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas you're just watching a bunch of people make the wrong decision, sometimes by mistake and sometimes not by mistake.
Yeah, it's not really like
to the possible end of the world.
It's not really. Yeah, it's not really a powerful person making the decision too. It's kind of maybe why it has such a.
Yeah, it was just like
feeling.
the head engineer
it's like you
of
or
the
me.
plant.
It's like we could have made this happen. It's not
conceivably.
It's just like a normal guy that.
Right.
I mean, you did a lot of bad stuff. So ideally, you or me wouldn't have been so negligent if we were in that position and hadn't known what he knew. But it did feel very like, yeah, it could have been anybody, I guess, that made that choice.
Right. Yeah, there's something more human and relatable about this sequence of events than other more popularized events in world history.
Oh, yeah.
At least going back to, our reckoning of world history as given to us by our education system,
Yeah. If they could just do history in shows like this, like history class, just teach me in TV shows.
Right.
I don't know if I would know history any better or not.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I don't think
was
that it
bad
would have
at history.
Yeah, I think that if this was the mode of education for history moving forward, I don't think that it would make too much of a change either.
I don't think it would make me learn any better or worse. I think I would. I might like it, but I might have more fun. Things like this
are meant as a gateway,
right?
The idea
and
is
it worked. It got me
to make an engaging story about something that was awful that needs to be reckoned with, and just to hook people and be like, okay, so now that you're in and you understand the basics of this story and what that meant, go actually learn.
Yeah. I think, that's what these shows did. I think this show did. Like it got, you're right. It hooked my interest in that, and it made me, want to know a lot.
At least receptive to, the then actual research and learning and maybe other world events and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's definitely like the kind of the general point of a historical dramatization like this.
Is 86, right? When did this happen? 86?
86.
I think my brother was born in 86. 87. Didn't the stock market crash in 86? I'm just kidding. I'm just tying everything. The only reason I might even be right about that is because I heard about it in the Wolf of Wall Street. Well, yeah, I recommend it. Watch it. I would watch this show. Want to tell everyone what we're doing moving forward next week? And
so we're going to be getting back to regularly scheduled. Well, the schedule hasn't changed. It's Wednesdays, but I'm getting back to the book club again. Like we said, we took now 2 weeks off from reading with the deadline, and so now we're going to get back onto it. Where we've chosen a book. Let me pull it back up again. So what we'll be reading is The Raven Tower, a novel by Anne Leckie. It's a about 416 pages according to the Goodreads webpage for it. The problem is that there's one chapter.
Oh yeah, it's hard to split.
It's not broken up in any way that makes it easy for us to say, okay, get to chapter 6 and then we're done. And the Kindle version doesn't have page numbers, which is, as everybody knows, my favorite fucking thing about Kindle is that sometimes you don't get page numbers, you get whatever the fuck location numbers are. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to split it in half. We're going to just make this 2 episodes. It's about 200-ish pages of reading each episode.
Yeah, so we're just going to try and find a good stopping point around halfway and then just like catch each other up on the overlap. It won't be too long. Yeah. I mean, the worst case is we spoil like, what, 5% of the book for each other, you know?
Right,
like,
yeah. It's not going to be a big deal. As far as the listeners are concerned, get somewhere halfway there and, you know, hopefully we line up to some degree. It's just the only way that we can think of doing this without, you know...
I'm sure there will be a bit of a natural stopping point, or it'll be a cliffhanger that'll be heartbreaking to stop at.
Right. And
just don't read past, like if it's 500
somewhere
pages,
in the
don't read past
point.
250, you know.
Yeah, something like that. If you're hooked for like the next 7 or 8 paragraphs, then fuck it, continue reading it, and then we'll catch up with you the next week. But
for sure.
You know, we're gonna split it in half. Maybe read the whole damn thing in one sitting, and then listen to the 2 episodes as you want. You know, however you want to do it. Much like Seven Eves, take it at your pace.
Yeah, but definitely check it out. Check out the book.
Yeah. So, The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie. It is a relatively new book. Came out February 26th of this year.
Sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Getting back to the gods.
Right. So, yeah, we're just going to split it in half. Just I guess more than anything, just expect 2 episodes of it from us. And read it how you like. In any case, we'll see y'all next week with that. Still on Wednesdays. I don't think we're going to do another 2 episode a week situations for maybe a little bit until we find something else we want to watch.
Unless something really jumps out at us.
Which, of course, we'll let y'all know. So, just continuing with the 1 episode a week on Wednesdays, as always. Back to the book club. And we'll see y'all with that. Maybe watch some more documentaries on any of the sources that we were talking about. There's a bunch of really good information out there that's worth learning about.
Yeah, definitely let us know. I'll check it out because I just like I said, I got that itch that I need to scratch. So I'm definitely gonna check some stuff out when I get home.
Maybe in a few years we'll get some sort of expose about what the fuck happened to Epstein, because that motherfucker got murdered in prison, and I don't care what anybody else says. He got murdered. Cover up, just like Chernobyl. We live in the Soviet Union. Back in the USSR. I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Schaffer.
This is Doggers and Timestamps.